My second time I missed falling today. It's a good day. Rainbow fever. She walked out to the rim of the rock to see what she could see. Darkness stretched to stars and the moon. She went back to blue. I can weave until the dawn breaks. I will weave what I have. Red of rocks and blue of the sky, the indigo of night. Hands moving at the speed of light, she raced with the sun. Shuttle flashing in the night, the rainbow bridge was done. We'll take the first step towards me. I sing to you with the sun, rising up from darkness to morn, the earth on the edge of days.
Good morning, everyone. And how fortunate are we to be able to gather in this beautiful place and on this land. It is wonderful to see so many of you here at Willow Lake. Welcome to the Granite Peak Universalist Unitarian Congregation in Prescott, Arizona. I am Tracy Augustine, your worship associate today, and I'm humbled to be among you at this hybrid service today. We extend a warm welcome to all, and we're so happy to have you join us here, either here or on Zoom, or on the YouTube video later today. We hope you are all in good health. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate, spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. If this is your first visit, can you give a wave? Anybody? All right, well, if there are first visitors later, we'll greet them
How
later.
about second visit?
Is this a second visit for anyone?
Or first live?
That's right, if it's a first live visit, you can wave and everybody can greet you later today. More information about our community can be found at our Visitors Cafe table in the back, or on our website, prescottuu.org, as well as chatting with some of the members. Please take a moment now, if you haven't already, to place your phones on worship mode. Before we begin our service, there are a few announcements. We are an active community, so please check the weekly peak, our website, the order of service, and Reverend Patty's videos for announcements. In addition to our recurring Zoom gatherings, there are upcoming events that include a presentation from the Equal Exchange Co-op about free trade goods, a gardening party, a cleanup at the parking lot, and several adult faith development offerings. Also, there's a save the date for November 2nd for a Day of the Dead celebration. We begin our service in the Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. The chalice reading today is a passage from a short story about reciprocity titled Path by Louisa Thompson Britz. Walk, only walk. Kiss the ground with your feet, always arriving into the here and now. There is no destination, nothing to do, to change, or mend, but wander with me to remember this land. Stroll through the weightless hours, each step complete at every point along the way. We light this chalice, a symbol of our heritage, in gratitude for this beloved community.
Good morning, everyone. What a gift, truly, it is to all be together today. A day that is warmer than other mornings this week. And if anybody feels cold, you can change your feeling by just going into the sunshine. It will warm you up in a moment. This whole day is a gift. As we look out to Willow Lake, we remember the gift of rain this summer. We think of the birds who make this place their home, whose names are all known by at least one person, Bronwyn Butterfield, but perhaps many of you also know their names. As described in Braiding Sweetgrass, which inspired this service, the world is full of gifts, simply scattered at our feet. These gifts come to us without our beckoning. It is not a reward. We cannot earn it or call it to us or even deserve it, and yet it appears. Our only role is to be open-eyed and present. Gifts exist in a realm of humility and mystery. As with random acts of kindness, we do not know their source. So I invite you into a time of being open-eyed and present, and let us sing together, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. Stand up.
Rejoice
Everybody sounded great. Now we're going to do our covenant, and we forgot to put it on the order of service, which is my responsibility. But most of you know it. But let's say it together with the promise that the next time we gather, it will be projected or something. We are in the midst of change. Our covenant is this: love is the doctrine of this congregation, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. Was it on your orders of service?
No.
Oh, somebody was reading off it. Oh, okay. So, since our children are off enjoying themselves, we will not, they're having their own story of all ages, I'm sure, there. So I invite you now, can you hear? Lou is putting her ears to this. Please raise your hand if you can't hear. The worst thing that happens is after the service, people come to me and say, I couldn't hear a thing. So you can do this. This always gets my attention, okay? I was brought up by a father who kept telling us to be quiet. And it's very, it was very internalized. So let's put our feet on this concrete. But think about what is below this concrete, this land that has been inhabited for so many years, this land that we love. I will ring my bell. So as we consider this earth beneath our feet, let us consider it as geologists and all those layers of different kinds of rocks and memories of all the upheavals of this earth, down farther and farther, getting hotter and hotter until we arrive at that fiery core. And if we consider now feeling this wind on our faces, the sky, and the clouds that are more beautiful here, I think, than anywhere on the earth. Those clouds, and above that, the universe, the starry night, the places where stars are born. Let us listen to what messages we might be receiving from this wind, from the grasses, and from the clouds. We are here today to listen. And each of us brings the joys and sorrows of our life, our own, those of our family, those of the circle of people we love, those of the country where we live, those of the countries we love, those of people who live far away and yet are connected with us through this interconnected web of life. After I ring the bell, I invite you to say the names of plants and animals you love, and to also, thank you, Tom, I'll speak up, and also the people whose lives you are now carrying on your hearts. Ponderosa pines. Alligators and aspens and continue to hold the people among us who are living with challenges. Especially today, let us hold Dan and Sandy Reardon. And let us hold Diane Harper, who is recovering well from her fall, and she is among us today. Yay! And Peter, who is doing so well as he enters the world in a new way. And Bob and Marilyn Coulter, may she have safety as she drives back alone from the east. Karen and Merle Hagberg, Pocahontas and Jean Gertler, who are far away but still in our hearts. Janer Eldridge, Eunice Lovejoy, Ainsley O'Donnell, Judy Davis. We also carry with us, hold especially today, the people of Haiti who are escaping a very terrible situation. May we as a country learn kindness and learn to treat them as we would treat ourselves. Now, as we enter a time of silence, about 2 minutes, I invite you to listen to what is happening around you. What are the voices of the trees and the wind and the cricket and the bird? What are they saying? Listen for those voices. And after that, I will give a meditation. Spirit of life, we are here. We are surrounded by the beauty of this place on earth. We are grateful for the rain that fell this summer, that continues to fall, that nourish the plants and animals of this place. We are grateful for the gifts of this creation, the gifts that come to us, that give us rest and joy. Amen. And may it be so. And now we get to sing together, walking with you. Walking with you is my prayer.
As we prepare to take the offering this morning, let us embrace the feeling of connection and community. that we have when we gather together. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. We also give back to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. October Seeds of Support will go to maintaining the link, funding our Latino Immigration Network Coalition, LINK, December event. This year's event will again be COVID-19 style, a drive-through at the GPUUC. Latinx families will be invited to our parking lot, where they will receive a huge bag of gifts for the children, gift cards for the adults, and a basket of holiday food goodies. Besides making an SOS donation, you can also sponsor a family. Please read more about that in your order of service and in the newsletter. If you are joining us remotely, you can also give through the website or use the link provided in the chat on the Zoom. We acknowledge the generosity of spirit expressed through this offering. What is given in love is given in gratitude. Blessed be.
Good morning. The reading is from Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. We come here to listen, to nestle in the curve of the roots of a small hollow of pine needles, to lean my bones against the column of white pine, to turn off the voices in my head until I can hear the voices outside of it. The shish of wind in the needles, water trickling over rock.
That's a problem.
Nuthatch tapping, chipmunks digging, peach nut falling, mosquito in my ear. And something more, something that is not me, for which we have no language. The words being of others in which we are never alone. After the triumph, after the drumbeat of my mother's heart, this was my first language. I could spend a whole day listening, and a whole night. And in the morning, without my hearing it, there might be a mushroom that was not there the night before, creamy white, pushed up from the pine needle duff, out of darkness, into light, still glistening with the fluid of its passage. Pakawi. Listening in wild places, we are audience to conversations in a language not our own.
As I've been preparing for this day, I have felt urgings. I wonder how many of you feel urgings on some days. On Thursday morning, before we opened the door that leads from our warm shelter into that sharp, cold air, we were buttoning up Louie's sweater, and I'm a knitter. He has a lovely assortment. Finding the right hat, I wondered, what if I listen to the natural world that I will encounter? What could the natural world be teaching me in this moment? I listened to the wind that was pulling the last of the dead pine needles off their perches and sending them down into the garden. What was no longer necessary was being sloughed off, making room for the new. The tiny apples were becoming sweeter with the cold. Perhaps 15 or 20 of these apples are needed for 1 cup of applesauce. But what a sauce! I wonder, are they telling me if I can withstand adversity, can I too become a little sweeter? In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Robin Wall Kimmerer is asking us to experience the natural world differently. A professor of botany, she has challenged the established way of scientifically investigating plants. She has challenged with new questions that could move us towards sustaining this beautiful earth into whose arms we were born. At the heart of this way of being with the natural world is what has been called the honorable harvest. And you have that on, if you have a sheet of paper with the songs on it, you also have the natural harvest. This practice, she wrote, is both ancient and urgent, and it applies to every exchange between people and the earth. Its protocol has not been written down, but if it were, it would look something like what you have. Let us say this together. The first one, ask permission of the ones whose lives you seek. Abide by the answer. Never take the first, never take the last. Harvest is a way that minimizes harm. Take only what you need and leave some for others. Use everything that you take. Take only that which is given to you. Share it as the earth has shared with you. Be grateful. Reciprocate the gift. Sustain the ones who sustain you, and the earth will last forever. I want you to keep these principles somewhere where you can see them and commit yourself to deepening your relationship with the ones that resonate with you. And then thinking of the ones that seem really difficult, and do a dance with those. In the first principle, she wrote, ask permission of the ones whose lives you seek. Abide by the answer. She is introducing us here to a linguistic switch that changes everything. Ask permission of the ones whose lives you seek. Plants and animals are no longer objects. They have risen to the level of human life. If we consider plants as being on the same level as humans and animals too, then when we buy fruit and vegetables, what if we consider them worthy of the question about whether they want us to go with us, if they want to go with us or not? This may seem strange, And certainly we could do a stand-up comedy act at a vegetable stand, asking the vegetables if they'd like to come with us. And I think that creating that space before we grab them and put them into our ecologically acceptable bag, if we take that space, that moment before we fill a bag with tomatoes, to consider that gift we are receiving. And if we think of those beautiful beings, and I admit I have eaten some amazing tomatoes this year, if you have thought of those beautiful beings as equal to all of us, how much do we really need? It kind of stops you from grabbing 3 too many that will sit in your refrigerator and not be used. We always try to shop when we're not hungry, but that's kind of hard. And we realize that there's something about Costco that inspires overbuying. We feel like we're good when we buy things in bulk, but for 2 people, that's really ridiculous. Do we really think we're going to eat that enormous bottle, the contents of that enormous bottle of olives before they go bad? We try to think of all that went into the packaged product, the farmers, the sunshine, rain. And in those moments, if you can take that moment before you grab that thing or as you are grabbing it, take that moment, and within that you have the power to resist that strong pull of materialism that treats the natural world as a commodity. And we know what that has done to the world. In that moment, we can understand how all that we buy, even though we're giving money, all of that is a gift that cannot end up in a garbage bag. And when we consider that gift, our eyes will also open to how receiving eggs from a bird that has to live in a cage with bright lights going on and off at different times is not a gift. We are not receiving the gift from that bird. Robin Wall Kimmerer says, "We are stealing. This is theft." That space, if we can allow it to be with us as we buy and as we choose things, that space allows us to reach for something for our table, and it will help us see when we are stealing from the earth. In our own garden, by the Faith Development Building, Stephen, could you just raise your hand? He is the garden hero. I think he deserves a round of applause. And he brings that different way of looking. He urges us to keep the plants that I was saying, ooh, that looks like a weed, because they are important for the birds and the bees. And instead of being angry by the apples that are being eaten by worms and birds, we can have the perspective that we are sharing that harvest. It's hard when you only have one apple on your tree, which I've had that experience. You don't feel so generous. Anyway, but often there is this generosity from which all can take a part. In the words of the Honorable Harvest, we are sharing as the earth has shared with us. And also intrinsic to this first principle is the necessity of learning the languages spoken by the natural world. The first step is to listen to the sounds and to watch and feel for what might be coming your way from them. For those of you who have learned a language, you know that there is a point where you learn a few words and you will listen to somebody speak that language and it just washes over you, but you're able to pick out 3 or 4 words that you understand. And I think that we can experience that with nature. If we stop and listen, and allow whatever is there to enter our world? Can you hear the song of the bats at night, the hoot of the owl, the javelinas who are leaving their scent as they pass through from the forest? And what could that spider be saying as she weaves her web? Thinking of the world in this way, suddenly, we humans are not at the center. Could this be how it feels to be a part of that interconnected web of life? To learn that we are not at the center. If you look at a map of the world sold in Japan, you will find Japan right smack dab in the middle, which feels odd to us from the United States. Here, we find it natural that our country is at the center of world maps. What if we shifted that map's perspective? Right now, what if we saw Haiti as at the center? We would need to learn new languages to listen to what is happening there. We would need to learn the history of that place and what role we have played in that history, this country has played in that history. We would see that the way that we objectify our food sources has been mirrored in the way that we have objectified many countries and been unable to see them as equals. The Haitian story is a story of liberation, of a war of independence. But when the victors were of African descent, our country could not see that victory as valid. They felt that the Haitians were threatening the liberation of enslaved people in this country, who did not receive, as my ancestors did, the promises of the War of Independence. We would not hear the Haitian pleas for equality. We would not learn their language, and we have continued to treat them differently than other asylum seekers. The current wave of Haitian immigrants is fleeing a country that has experienced compounding crises. This summer, Haiti suffered a magnitude of 7.2 earthquake and a tropical storm that killed an estimated 2,200, but with thousands more missing. And they are still reeling from January 2010. Do you remember that earthquake? I knew people who flew to that place. That earthquake affected 3 million people. What would it mean to listen in their language? Robin Wall Kimmerer wrote, "To be native to a place, we must learn to speak its language." She said, "Listening in wild places, we are audience to conversations in a language that is not our own. I think now that it was a longing for this language I hear in the woods that led me to science, to learn over the years to speak fluent botany." Wouldn't it be wonderful to speak fluent botany? For an honorable harvest, we only take what we need. A year and a half ago, and it seems like 5 years ago, when I was invited to give a spiritual perspective on climate change, I told the story of my great-grandmother Patty, who pioneered into the Bighorn Basin, while she and her children and her husband, who died around this time as well, they were living in a log cabin near the Shoshone River, a wild river. And she heard a voice. She loved to tell this story. I can hear her voice saying, "Clifford is in the river. Clifford is in the river." She listened. She ran to the river, which was quite a ways away, and she saved her son from drowning. I believe that almost all of us hear the voice of the earth calling about the dangers of climate change, the necessity for us to act, to try to mitigate the circumstances that are leading to the drastic changes in climate, the things that are driving people to our doors. Robin Wall Kimmerer deepens this idea of the earth calling to us. She opens our eyes to the reciprocity that can exist between us and this beautiful natural world by listening and then responding. This relationship, I believe, can create a practice that will nourish us for that work, that will not make us sigh when we hear the words climate change and feel the impossibility of it, because we will be listening and our work will be to respond. Our love of the earth and the love that we feel in return by our conversations with the deer that pass by our windows, the ravens high in the branches, with their complex language. Oh, I wish I knew what they were saying. These relationships with the earth make us nimble. When we hear the call to save the dells, or the sunrise movement actions that are happening in Phoenix at the beginning of this week, they are inspiring Anna Fleury and Mary Steenhoek into action. Our work to protect the earth will be an extension of the ways we are all through the day, that pause in front of the vegetables. We will not take what we cannot use. We will sustain the ones who sustain us, so that the earth can last forever. Who would like the earth, this beautiful earth, to last forever? This needs all of our light. So let us sing together and stand if you're in spirit and in body, and we will sing this little light of mine.
How do you have gestures? This is the light. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. All right? Okay. The next verse is, everywhere I go, I'm going to let it shine. And the last one is building up a world. Right? I'm going to let it shine. Okay. Now.
These gifts come to us through no action of our own, free, having moved towards us without our beckoning. It is not a reward. We cannot earn it. or call it to us, or even deserve it, and yet it appears our only role is to be open-eyed and present. May we be open-eyed and present to this beautiful earth. Amen, and may it be so.
This is a piece called Standing in Silence.
Before we extinguish our chalice, we have a bit of business. Anna Fleury, would you come up to I didn't tell her this, so you can refuse. We have a new social justice coordinator, and she is going to be here. She's going to be coming to our services, and I want you to tell her what is your passion for social justice. So have her hear your passion, and she will tell hers, and you will watch her eyes catch fire. So, and I also have some other business. Terry Eggleston, could you please stand? And Chris Hawthorne, and Deidre Schwartz, and Patrick and Ardella Moran, because I don't know that you know these people. Do you? No. Okay, they are new members of our congregation. They valiantly took a leap of faith when we weren't even meeting with each other, and that's amazing. So thank you, all of you. And I want you to talk with Anna and tell her your passion. She can't hear from everybody today, but and I want you to get to know these wonderful people who have entered our community. And now we will extinguish our chalice. Okay, thank you, Anna. Okay, We
Extinguish our flame,
but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.